Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. How's everybody doing out there? I usually start by telling you how my weekend went, but I think if you've been a follower of the show for the past little while, you probably already know how the weekend went for me. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic! Lions make a statement win against the great story up-and-coming Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We smoked them. The 49ers and the Eagles both lose. The Lions move right in to tied for that top spot in the NFC. Everything is just coming up peachy, to be totally honest. I'm 4-2 in fantasy football, top of my division, even with Austin Eckler being out for a couple weeks. That's neither here nor there. We'll get to the Chargers game in a little bit, but I wanted to start, obviously, with the story of the NFL right now. The best team in the NFL, according to multiple big media personalities, the Detroit Lions. Now, I am usually not one to say I told you so. I promise I'm not. I've been told to be humble with my takes. Like, you guys want to see someone who's personable, someone who you can relate. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the topic for that because I freaking tried to warn all of you before the season. Check out the history of this channel. One of the first videos I made on this when I set up this whole channel, this podcast, whatever the hell you want to call it, I said the Detroit Lions are making the Super Bowl. That was my prediction to start off the entire season. I laid out the facts. I laid out that Jared Goff had been playing the best football of his career the last 9 weeks of last season. I pointed out that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a top 5 wide receiver that doesn't get discussed enough. I talked about how improved the defense is going to be with Aiden Hutchinson coming into his own as the Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I talked about Dan Campbell and how his culture has been shifting the entire landscape of the state of Michigan. I tried to tell everybody that, and I still got called a delusional Lions fan, someone who can't see the truth about the NFL, someone who's unobjective, someone who only roots for his own team. And I am here to tell you, you were wrong. Because if you can't see that this team is the real deal now, you'll never see it. These Lions are legitimate Super Bowl contenders and potential favorites if the 49ers and the Eagles keep going the way that they're going right now. Let me start with this. Quarterback was the thing coming into the season that everyone had hesitation about. You know what I mean? Everyone said the roster's really good. You know, you got a solid defense, blah, 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 good receivers. But your quarterback isn't that guy. He's not a Mahomes. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not a Jalen Hurts. And those are the type of guys who gets you to the Super Bowl nowadays because it's such a passing league, such an offensively driven league. You need one of these superstars to take you all the way. Well, wouldn't you know it? Our quarterback is a freaking superstar. Like, in every single statistic you can measure a quarterback in, he is top 5. So listen, he just won NFC Player of the Week last week. David Montgomery goes down for the second time this year. By the way, a quick side note, that is the only reason we're not 6-0 right now. If David Montgomery doesn't go down in that Seattle game, I am convinced we win that game by at least a touchdown. You know why? Because the best way to attack Seattle is by running it in the interior. We were doing that to them perfectly for the first quarter or so, and then Montgomery went down. All right, that is not anybody's fault. It just happens sometimes. All right, he got hurt. That's the only reason we're not 6-0 right now. But Jared Goff, NFC Player of the Week this week. He is 3rd in quarterback rating currently. He is 1st in 20-plus yard passing, 3rd in yards per attempt, 4th in touchdowns accounted for, 4th in completion percentage, 5th in passing yards, and the Lions as a whole have the 2nd best run defense in the NFL. I know that's not a Jared Goff stat, just wanted to point that out. Guys, this is scary hours for the NFL. If you get a guy who is a former number 1 overall pick, so clearly he has all of the talent in the world, if you get this guy playing his best football with this roster around him, it's going to be hard to stop. And the thing that's so impressive about this team and what they've done is everyone knows you build the best rosters through the draft. The 90s Cowboys are built through the draft, through picks. You know, the Chiefs, they drafted Mahomes, Kelsey, Jones. Those are all their draft picks. You build through the draft. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round pick. This new tight end, Sam Laporta, who has been far and away the best rookie tight end we've seen in years, I got a stat for him. Second tight end ever to have 30 plus receiving yards in each of his first 6 games. We got him in the second round. We got Brian Branch in the second round, and he hasn't played that much. Like, it's not like we've avoided injuries. You know what I mean? It's not like the 49ers have been crushed this entire year with like Debo, McCaffrey, Purdy, everyone going down, and we've just been, rock solid healthy. That has not been the case. Jahmyr Gibbs has missed games. As I mentioned, Montgomery's missed games. Branch has been out. Amon-Ra St. Brown missed a couple games. Like, everything has not exactly been going according to plan. CJ Gardner-Johnson is out for the year after the first week of the season. That was one of our big secondary signings. Emmanuel Mosley tore his knee again. But it doesn't matter because we have the right culture in place for the next guy to come in and step up. Whether that's Craig Reynolds coming in for David Montgomery and he lays that huge block for that touchdown, just running his tail off. Whether that's Dan Skipper coming in on the offensive line and just an old hack of a man, but he just tries his best. Josh Reynolds making huge plays. Khalif Raymond has been great on punt returns. Everything is coming up Detroit right now. Everything. And we have the best offensive line in football. Penei Sewell is the best right tackle in football. What's the hole in this roster? Like, you guys pointed out quarterback to me when the season started. That's not an issue anymore. So let's throw that crap in the trash. What's the problem on this roster? Now, when they play a San Francisco or a Philly who can rush for and still get pressure against this offensive line, that's when the real test is going to be. But like, I've got to tell you, we don't have any of those games up on our schedule right now. Like, let's look at the next few weeks here. So we got the Ravens next week. That's a tough game. But you're telling me that we can't beat them when our roster is clearly superior to theirs? Like, quarterback, let's call it a wash. Wide receivers, I'll take ours. Tight ends, I'll take ours. Like, offensive line, ours is better. Run defense. Our roster is better. The only thing that scares me is that game is in Baltimore. But it's supposed to be pretty good weather for that game, so I think we've got a solid chance at winning. That might be coming up in Spit's picks later. Stay tuned. But Ravens next week. Tough game. Then we got the Raiders next week, Monday Night Football. We beat them. Chargers. I think that's going to be a tough game, but like the Chargers always seem to find ways to lose, and right now we seem to be finding ways to win. So I think we're going to win that game. We play the Bears next. We're clearly better than them. We already beat the Packers at their place, and now they come to our place. We play the Saints. Obviously, we can beat them. Play the Bears again, then the Broncos, then the Vikings, then the Vikings again. The only tough games left are the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Cowboys, and maybe the Saints if you're a Derek Carr believer, which I'm definitely not. You're telling me this team can't win 14 games this season? Guys, it's time to see the change in this NFL. All right? So change can be scary. Like, that's kind of a generality, but change can be scary for people. It's hard to adjust from one thing being the status quo for years and then that evolving into another thing. The Lions have been a joke since 30 years before I was born. Totally understand that. This isn't those Lions. This is a Detroit Lions team that has culture, has grit, has talent, have some of the nicest jerseys in the NFL, have some of the greatest fans in the NFL who have taken over every road game they've been at. Special team. This, for some reason, is it just me or did they have Team of Destiny written all over them? First year I start this podcast as a Lions fan, they go on and win the Super Bowl. Listen, to say I'm rooting for it would be maybe the all-time understatement. This team is special, man. This team is special, and everyone's starting to come onto the train that I started 3 months ago. Toot, get on board, or this train is going to run you over on our way to Los Angeles for that Super Bowl. So, moving on, I could talk about those Lions for half an hour, but I do have to talk about some other things so, I can gain interest from other sections of the NFL and sports world. So I want to talk about Chargers Cowboys because someone has to talk some reason into the general public about Justin Herbert. Okay, listen. Is he perfect? No. Is he Patrick Mahomes? No. No one is. I'm not saying he's that. What I'm saying is he is an undisputed top 5 quarterback who gets more blame than anybody in his position should. Listen, if you watch that game on Monday, I totally understand Dak got sacked 6 times. and Herbert got sacked less than that. I actually don't have the number in front of me, but if you actually watched the game, Herbert threw 37 passes in that game. I counted that he had a clean pocket on 15 of them. Like, he had actually had space to throw the ball. The pocket wasn't collapsed into him from the inside or edge rushers coming in from the outside. It was a clean pocket where he had space to throw 15 times. Dak, it was 80% of the time. It was a clean pocket. If he got pressured, he was going to get sacked. But he didn't get pressured all that often. Herbert was under duress, man, that entire game. And with Corey Linsley being out at center, the interior pressure that was on him the entire game, like, I don't know what Dak could have done with that. Dak, I thought, played spectacularly. I thought with the weapons that he has and the offensive line that he has, I thought he put the team on his back and had a great game against an awful defense, coached by one of the worst defensive head coaches I've seen in my life. Listen, we have to grade NFL players on somewhat degree of difficulty, right? If I play the worst defense in the NFL and throw a party, it's probably more impressive for another guy to throw, 200 yards against the Niners, right? Like, you have to understand who you're playing against. Dak was playing against the worst passing defense in the league. Herbert was playing against arguably a top 5 passing defense. In fact, not even arguably, a top 5 passing defense with a top 3 pass rush. And he still threw for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. I understand he threw that pick at the end. But listen, it's 3rd and 10. He's under duress, and he tried to make a play. Because that's what he has to do for this team. He's like Josh Allen in that way, in which he has to be Superman all of the time for his team to have a chance. And everyone tells me about how good like this Chargers roster is. You know what I mean? Like, oh, if you look down the roster player by player, they're really, really good. They should be up there with the top teams in the AFC. Should they? Like I say this a lot. The offensive side is obviously the more important side of the ball currently in the league with the rules and all of that. So let's just look at that. Keenan Allen's your number 1. Phenomenal player. He had a great game on Monday. Him and Herbert have a great connection. Awesome. Number 1. Who's his number 2? Josh Palmer, who had a couple of catches and like he was good, but I mean, he's not number 2 level. Donald Parham as his tight end. Gerald Everett, who Sean McVay gave up on. He's got Eckler coming out of the backfield, which for little dump offs, which they didn't use all that much, which I still don't quite understand. Yeah. What is the weaponry he's really working with here, guys? Like, I don't think Dak's weapons are that good, but you better believe I'm taking the Cowboys' weapons every day and twice on Sundays over the Chargers roster. I understand that most people can agree that Herbert isn't the problem in LA, but the fact that some people, some crazy individuals are saying that he needs to be this God savior solution to this franchise who's cheap, who won't hire a expensive head coach, a franchise who's spent a lot of money on just old veteran players who have probably passed their prime. It's not on him at all. I still think he's a top 5 quarterback. I think if Herbert was the quarterback of the Cowboys right now, they'd be the Super Bowl favorites over the Lions. And that's saying something coming from me. I think they'd be the Super Bowl favorites. Whereas if you put Dak on the Chargers, is that team winning 7 games? I don't think so. Which, somewhat, and it's not the best transition, but it leads me into Spit's picks. You'll see in a second. First pick. Well, first of all, we went 2-3 last week. First losing week of the season. A couple of major issues in my picks. That, to be honest, last week the spreads just weren't that good. And when you're in a position that you have to make 5 picks a week, you're going to end up picking some that you don't really have full faith in. And of course, the 3 that I lost were the ones I didn't really have full faith in with my gut. Fortunately, this week has a lot better lines, and I'm feeling really, really good about these picks. I'm thinking 4-1 at the least. And I want to start with Lions versus Ravens. And I'm obviously picking the Lions getting 3 points. Listen, I understand it's in Baltimore, and it's probably going to be a harsh environment for Detroit. But honestly, I just look at the rosters and Detroit's just better. They have better offensive talent. They've been playing better defense of late. They're the second best run stopping team in the NFL and what the Ravens love to do is run the ball. I love the Lions in the spot, especially catching a full field goal against the Ravens. It looks like free money to me. I got the Lions over the Ravens getting the 3 points. Bucks, how are they getting 2.5 points against the Falcons? Look, please don't let the Bucks game against the Lions fool you. These guys are really good, especially on defense. And when you have a really good defense led by a great pass rush going against a quarterback who gets flustered by pass rushes, I like that side. I don't think Ritter is the guy. I think they know he's not the guy. And this Bucks team tends to expose below average quarterbacks. I think they do that again. Bucks getting 2.5 at Atlanta. Evans wasn't 100% against the Lions. I think he'll be even better this week. Love that pick. Might be my favorite pick of the week. Bucks getting 2.5. Chargers. This is what I was kind of saying about the transition, they're getting 5.5 points versus the Chiefs, which I think is just too many. First of all, this is a desperate team. They are now a couple games below 500, and they need to win this game if they're going to have any chance in the AFC. AFC is a hell of a conference, and they need to get their act together if they are going to have a chance at these playoffs, which they definitely should have with a quarterback of that caliber. They always play the Chiefs tight. It's always a heck of a matchup, always one of the most entertaining games, and it usually comes down to about a field goal. They just match up well against them. And I think when you see a team so much in your division, you kind of get little tells and stuff like that, and that always makes it close games, unless you're Mahomes playing the Broncos. I got the Chargers getting 5.5. I think it's too many. The Packers, listen, they're only getting a point versus the Broncos. Sorry, they're -1. They're point favorites. How? How does Vegas have such little respect for the Packers? I understand that Love hasn't looked as good as we thought he was going to. And I understand that besides a couple of, awful defensive plays, the Broncos have actually looked, competent this year on offense. But guys, the Packers defense is exceptionally underrated. They're not very good against the run, but they are exceptional against the pass. And that, plus the fact that I think Jordan Love is going to have a bounce back game with Christian Watson getting more and more healthy. I think the Packers have better weapons. I think they're better coached. I think their defense is better, and they're only laying a point against a bad Broncos team who it seems like is in free fall right now. Only laying a point. I love the Packers this week. And my last pick is I usually hate picking big favorites. 49ers -7 against Minnesota. Look, once you're coming off your first regular season loss in, 14, 15 games, I think they're going to bounce back with a vengeance against a Minnesota team who is just bad on defense. I think Purdy is better than, most of the media is rating him currently after that, I think he did his job. He got his team in field goal range against a historically great defense, and his kicker just missed it. I think Purdy's really, really good. I think this team is one of the best coached teams in the NFL, unlike the Vikings. And with no Justin Jefferson, I just don't see how they move the ball against this defense led by Nick Bosa and that Fred Warner guy who I think should be in Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Anyways, that is all for the show. Long one today. I wouldn't have it any other way for this, though. I haven't been able to make an episode in a little while. But please let me know what you thought. Am I crazy about my Lions take? What did you guys think of Spit's picks this week? Let me know in the comments below. As always, the Spit Show hopefully comes out every other day, but it's been hard. Believe it or not, I do have a life outside of this podcast that gets 100 views per video. I know, crazy to think about, but I do. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.